A pleasant morning to everyone, and we warmly welcome you to the online dissemination forum on the latest results of the food consumption and biochemical components of the expanded National Nutrition Survey. Our theme for today is What does the ENNS data say? Are we on track? Unmasking the dietary intake, vitamin A and iodine status, and iodine content of salts among Filipino households before the pandemic. I am Frances Arias, and together with my partner, Miss Melin Kahukom, we will be your hosts and moderators for this morning session.
Just some reminders for Zoom participants. The webinar will be recorded for documentation purposes. Please sign up in the attendance link, which will be provided in the chat box. Kindly type your questions and comments in the Zoom Q&A box. For those who are watching via DOST-FNRI YouTube channel, you may also key in your questions in the chat box in the YouTube page. Certificates will only be given to Zoom webinar attendees who have successfully answered the pre-test, post-test, and evaluation. To receive a certificate, please fill out the attendance sheet. The link will be posted in the Zoom webinar chat box. Please make sure to accomplish the post-test and evaluation form in the ENNS website using your account. The link will be posted in the chat box. The post-test and the evaluation form will only be open until 12 noon tomorrow, May 28, 2021. Please give us 7 working days to process the certificates. The certificate of attendance will be sent to your email. Please make sure to provide a valid and correct email address. Thank you. Let us start our program with a doxology to be followed by the Philippine National Anthem and DOST hymn.
Remind us where you are. shadows fill our day. Lead us to a place, guide us with your grace, to a place where we'll be safe. A world where pain and sorrow will be ended, and every heart that's broken will be mended. Then we'll remember we are God's children, reaching out to touch you, reaching to the sky. We ask this life be kind. We ask that life be kind and watch us from above. And watch us from above. We hope it's so will find. We hope it's so will find. Another soul to love. Another soul to love. Let this be our prayer. Let this be our prayer. Just like every child. Just like every child. Need to find a place. Guide us with your grace. Give us faith so we'll be safe. Need to find a place. Guide us with your grace. Give us faith so we'll be
Sabay-sabay po nating awitin ang pambansang awit ng Pilipinas. Bayang magiliw, perlas ng silanganan, arap ng puso, sa dibdib mo'y buhay. Lupang hinihang, duyan ka ng magiting, sa manluluping, ipapasisihin, sa dagat at bundok, sa simay at sa langit mong buhaw. May dilagang tula, awit sa bayang minamahal, ang paskap ng watawat mo'y tagumpay na nagniningning. Ang bituin at araw niya kailan pa may di magdidilim. Lupa ng araw ng walhati pagsinta, buhay ay langit sa piling mo. Aming ligaya na pag may mga api, ang mamatay ng dahil sa'yo.
Awitin po natin ang himig DOST.
Dumating na ang bagong pag-asa ng ating bansang sinisinta. Ang DOST ay sumilang na lingkod ng bayan sa tuwina. Pagtuklas ng bagong karunungan sa iba't ibang uwing agham. Ang miktika sa ganahan at kaunlaran ng ating lipunan. Ibandila ang kanyang sagisag, kay tanda ng pagsisikap. Pag-unlad nating pangarap ay biyayang nalalasap. Magpugay tayo ng sabay-sabay, mabuhay, mabuhay.
layunin dakila at may pagkakapuri, magkaisa ng dalangin para sa inang bayan. Mabuhay, mabuhay ang DOST, ang sensya'y sandigan ng maunlad na bayan. Layunin dakila at may pagkakapuri, magkaisa ng dalangin para sa inang bayan.
Thank you so much. Now, to formally start the program, may we please call on Ms. Nasrian Buiko for the introduction of our session participants.
Hello everyone, and welcome to today's session. I hope you're all safe and doing great. There are currently 370 attendees in our session and more are coming in as we speak. Among our attendees, we recognize the presence of the pillars of the Food and Nutrition Research Institute, our former directors, Dr. Mario Capanzana and Dr. Corazon Barba, as well as our former division chief, Dr. Cecilia Acuin. Good morning. We have a lot of participants coming from different government agencies as well. The National Nutrition Council, Department of Health, Department of Education, Department of Social Welfare and Development, Department of Interior and Local Government, Food and Drug Administration, and the Philippine Statistics Authority. Let us also recognize the presence of Regional Nutrition Program Coordinators from the NCR, Ms. Federizo, and from the Cordillera Administrative Region, Ms. Rita Pape. Also with us are the Provincial Nutrition Coordinators from Zamboanga del Norte, Zamboanga del Sur, Bukidnon Province, and Davao del Sur. From the Department of Education, we also welcome Director 3, Dr. Naliponggit. We also have in attendance Misamis Oriental Provincial Science and Technology Director, Engineer Juneline Ruiz. Colleagues from the academe are also attending this session. We have professors, instructors, researchers, and students. The National President of the Nutritionist Dietitians Association of the Philippines and DAP, Associate Professor Zenaida Velasco, is also registered to our session. We have NGOs among our participants. We welcome the Executive Director of the Nutrition Center of the Philippines, Dr. Castro, as well as the past Chairman President of the Nutrition Foundation of the Philippines Incorporated, Dr. Florentino. World Bank Group, World Vision, Vitamin Angels are also represented in this session. This event also welcomes our international participants. We have representatives from Holmusk in Singapore, a data science and health tech company, Helen Keller International, Johns Hopkins School of Public Health, University of New South Wales, University of California, Santa Cruz, Hebrew University of Jerusalem, University of Tokyo. We also have representatives from hospitals in Malaysia, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, from New Zealand and Italy. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all of you. Lastly, we acknowledge all the participants from the provinces HUCs covered last 2019. Our provincial, municipal, city nutrition action officers, health officers, and our community health workers. Again, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone. We welcome you to the 2019 Expanded National Nutrition Survey ENNS Online Dissemination Forum.
Thank you, Ms. Buiko, for your very extensive introduction of our session participants. We are very much honored and privileged that we are graced today by so many experts on varying fields of health and nutrition. We want to extend our appreciation to everyone who gave their valuable time to be with us today in this dissemination forum.
To give her welcome and opening remarks, I'm pleased to introduce to you our very own FNRI Director and Scientist too, Dr. Imelda Angeles Agdepa. She graduated cum laude from her PhD in nutrition from the Simeo Tropmed Regional Center of Community Nutrition, University of Indonesia. She is an expert in food and nutrition researches, focusing on efficacy, effectiveness, social marketing, and cross-sectional surveys, and acts as principal investigator in numerous studies. She is also currently a board member of Nutrition and Dietetics Professional Regulation Commission. Some of her notable awards are the Pag-asa Award, Alberto Romualdez Outstanding Health Research Award, Clara Ruth Darby Award, Outstanding 10 Leaders in Nutrition, and PRC Citation Award as Outstanding Professional. Once again, Dr. Imelda Angeles Agdepa.
Thank you so much, Frances, for that very kind introduction. So, Secretary Fortunato T. De La Peña, the Secretary of the Department of Science and Technology, Dr. Rowena Cristina L. Guevara, the DOST Undersecretary for Research and Development, and Dr. Renato U. Solidum Jr., the DOST Undersecretary for Scientific and Technical Services, our other DOST members, MANCOM members, and other directors of the DOST system, former directors of the Food and Nutrition Research Institute. Magandang umaga po sa ating lahat. Our esteemed participants in this online forum, including our previous directors, Dr. Mario Capansana, Dr. Corazon Barba, Dr. Rodolfo Florentino, Dr. Aida Aguinaldo, our government and non-government agency partners, valued participants, a pleasant morning to all of you. I am pleased actually to welcome you all to our online dissemination forum on the food consumption and biochemical survey, which is actually the second part of our National Nutrition Summit, which was previously held last year, August 4, 2020. I would also like to extend our warm greetings and thanks to our DOST family, especially to our regional directors and provincial SNT directors for their unceasing support to the expanded National Nutrition Survey. To the officers and staff of the National Nutrition Council, to all our regional nutrition program coordinators, to our dear friends from the Philippine Statistics Authority, to all our colleagues in the government and private sectors, the academe, the industries, our international partners, and most especially to all the regional, provincial, municipal, city, and barangay nutrition and health officers and staff, advocates of nutrition, friends, ladies, and gentlemen, magandang umaga po sa ating lahat. Over the years, the Food and Nutrition Research Institute of the Department of Science and Technology has gone a long way in fulfilling our mandate to define the nutritional status of the Filipino citizens, providing timely, reliable, and accurate data and information. And even at the current situation, where the country is posed with challenges in the COVID-19 pandemic, DOST-FNRI continues its task to provide reliable and accurate data through the conduct of the Rapid Nutritional Assessment Survey, or the ENNS, which was actually conducted last November 3 to December 3, because we were not actually able to cover the remaining 37 provinces which was actually supposed to be covered in 2020 for the expanded National Nutrition Survey. As soon as we will be resuming our food survey operations for the 2021 expanded National Nutrition Survey, we urge also again the cooperation of our regional and provincial DOST system as well as our National Nutrition Council. In 2018, we have embarked on a new survey design and utilized the 2013 master sample of the Philippine Statistics Agency. the ENNS is quite similar to the previous NNS we have conducted in terms of the survey components and variables being collected, but this is notable in terms of its coverage and sample size. From the 40,000 sample households before, the sample size in the ENNS has increased fourfolds to about 180,000 households. This is to respond to the clamor of our LGUs, the Congress, and also our stakeholders for local data estimates to be used for their development plans. The survey results are also very much crucial to monitor progress towards the country's goal and commitments, such as the Philippine Plan of Action for Nutrition, the Philippine Development Plan, the Sustainable Development Goals, and the Global Nutrition Targets. This being said, the DOST-FNRI, through this online dissemination forum, delivers to you the results of the food consumption survey at the individual as well as household level. As well, the results of this biochemical survey on the vitamin A status, iodine content of household salt, and awareness of usage of iodized salt by our Filipino households will also be presented. At this point, we would be presenting some clarification on the interpretation and usage of our ENNS data, because as we have presented before, the rolling survey should have been until 2020, covering 117 provinces as well as highly urbanized cities. However, due to the pandemic, the Year 3 data collection has been terminated. Thus, our trend in various nutrition indicators will have to use the calculated pooled data for the 2018 and the 2019 only. This will be further explained later on during the presentation of the different indicators. This information will provide opportunities to better track the changes and improvements in nutrition situation of the country so that we can soon be one step ahead in addressing pressing health and nutrition problems. And at the current time, wherein our long-standing problems on malnutrition is further aggravated by food insecurity brought about by the pandemic, it is important to provide appropriate interventions and policies by all sectors. So we need work collaboratively towards this goal. This forum is also a remarkable day for us because the dietary and biochemical results will give a complete picture of our country's nutrition and health status, complementing the previously shared results of the National Nutrition Survey last August. Our hard-working researchers has surveyed 39 provinces and highly urbanized cities last 2019 in order for us to report the results of the survey. There were a number of challenges encountered along the way, especially with the ongoing health crisis, having limited staff allowed to report at the office, and adjusting with alternative work arrangement while keeping in mind everyone's safety. Our dedicated researchers, editors, encoders, and validators, and of course our statisticians, remain devoted to the task and poured their passion on processing the results of the survey, even when working remotely during the enhanced community quarantine and the MCQ is so difficult. The pandemic, just like other institutions, has indeed affected our workflow and timeline to great extent. But with everyone's cooperation, we managed to provide you the latest results of the survey today. I would like to take this opportunity to thank our partner agencies, the DOH, the PSA, the DILG, NNC, DOST regional offices and provincial offices, and the Center for Health Development offices in the region, as well as the stakeholders for their relentless support. We would not be able to harmoniously conduct this ENNS without the assistance of the mentioned agencies. So we encourage you to keep your ears on the different presentations, as this will serve as a very critical reference or basis for your program planning for you to set strategies that could be game changers in the current local situation. Muli, magandang umaga po sa ating lahat and stay safe. At this juncture, I'd like to introduce to you our distinguished guests. It is an honor and privilege to introduce the Secretary of the Department of Science and Technology to give us an inspirational message. Secretary Fortunato P. De La Peña, we fondly call him Sec Boy, the DOST Secretary, started his professional career at then the ESSO Standard Eastern as a cost and operations engineer in 1969, just after graduating with a BS Chemical Engineering degree from the University of the Philippines that year. He took up graduate studies in industrial engineering at the same university and earned a master's degree in industrial engineering. He joined the UP College of Engineering faculty as an instructor in 1973 and rose to become full professor in 1988. He served UP in various capacities as chairman of the Department of Industrial Engineering and Operations Research, as assistant to the executive director of the National Engineering Center, as director of the Institute of Small Scale Industries, and as system vice president for planning and development. He taught industrial engineering and operations research at the University of the Philippines for 43 years from 1973 to 2016. He was seconded to the National Science and Technology Authority, which later became the Department of Science and Technology 3 times. As head of its planning service, as director of its Technology Application and Promotion Institute, and as undersecretary for scientific and technical services, after which he retired in 2014. In 2016, he was appointed DOST Secretary. He led a number of professional organizations as its president. There are the Philippine Institute of Chemical Engineers, the Association of Management and Industrial Engineers of the Philippines, the National Research Council of the Philippines, and the Philippine Association for the Advancement of Science and Technology. He also served as chair of the UN Commission on Science and Technology Development. The awards he received include the Dangal ng Bayan Award from the Civil Service Commission, the Outstanding Career Executive Officer Award from the Career Executive Service Board, the Outstanding Professional Award from the Professional Regulations Commission, the UP Alumni Association Award for Public Service, the UP Alumni Engineers Most Distinguished Alumnus Award, the UP Alumni Engineers the UP Alumni Association Lifetime Distinguished Achievement Award, and the Ateneo Government Service Award. The University of the Philippines conferred on him the degree of Doctor of Laws, honoris causa, in 2018. Ladies and gentlemen, guests, I am proud to present to you our very diligent Secretary Fortunato de la Peña.
Warmest greetings to everyone. To NEDA Undersecretary Rosemary De Leon, to DOST Undersecretary Rowena Cristina Guevara, to our FNRI Director Imelda Agdepa and Deputy Director Anthony Calibo, our colleagues and advocates of health and nutrition, both in the government and private sectors, the academe, professional organizations, industries, and our international partners. And of course, to the hardworking personnel of FNRI, it gives me great pleasure to greet all of you. Magandang umaga sa inyong lahat. Community, I would like to extend our warm greetings and appreciation to the Nutritional Assessment and Monitoring Division of DOST FNRI, led by their previous chief, now the FNRI Director, Dr. Agdepa, the main organizers of this event, and to all field researchers who have made the 2019 Expanded National Nutrition Survey possible. The theme for today's online dissemination forum is, what does the 2019 data say? Are we on track? Is relevant and timely because we will have the opportunity to know our current situation and progress towards achieving our goals in nutrition, specifically Sustainable Development Goal number 2, or zero hunger, by the year 2030. And it cannot be denied that aggressive efforts are necessary for us not to fall behind this target. As a member of the United Nations, our country has committed to adopting the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, which includes the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. We need to accelerate human capital development to boost the country's economic growth and in return achieve sustainable development. The Philippine Development Plan identified the provision of quality nutrition and health care interventions at all life stages as strategies to accelerate human capital development, which could lead to an improvement in the country's economic growth. To accurately track health and nutrition indicators using the ENNS, the data for the 3-year rolling surveys must be pooled and compared with the previous National Nutrition Survey. However, the COVID-19 pandemic has greatly affected the conduct of the ENNS. Thus, only the data from the 2018 and 2019 ENNS were pooled to gauge where we are in achieving some of the targets in the Philippines Plan of Action for Nutrition and Sustainable Development Goals. The PPAN target in the year 2022 for the proportion of wasted children under 5 years is less than 5%, and for stunting, our target is 21.4% or less, while for the prevalence overweight children under 5 years is less than 3.9%. So in the coming weeks, the DOST FNRI will release the full results for these key indicators and will be uploaded in the DOST FNRI e-nutrition website. Meanwhile, are we near in achieving the 2022 PPAN target for the prevalence of children 6 months to 5 years old with minimum A deficiency less than 15%? How about our target for the prevalence of iodine deficiency among school-aged children and lactating women? These are some of the questions that we will answer in the forum. Extreme hunger and malnutrition hinder the progressive development of our country, and our nutrition situation may worsen due to the additional burden brought about by the COVID-19 pandemic. Now, more than ever, we need sustainable and science-based solutions to end hunger in all forms and achieve food security to help our country get back on its feet. The DOST is very supportive of the goal to uplift the socio-economic well-being of the Filipino people to ensure sustainable development for the future generations, as it is mandated to provide central direction, leadership, and coordination of scientific and technological efforts and ensure that the results therefrom are geared and utilized in areas of maximum economic and social benefits for the people. Research and development in agriculture, food, nutrition, and health are being conducted by the DOST and its research and development institutes to fulfill this mission. Accordingly, DOST-FNRI's mission is to provide accurate data, correct information, and innovative technologies to fight malnutrition. They are continually delivering data and information which helps in the improvement of the health and nutritional status of the Filipino population. Amidst the pandemic, they contribute to provide survey results through the Rapid Nutrition Assessment Survey done on November 3 to December 3, 2020, and in selected 9 provinces and highly urbanized cities with about 5,717 households covered, and the response rate was 96.2%. This was done just to give a snapshot of the effect of the pandemic in the sampled households in the 9 areas. The data that will be presented today are crucial in the planning, implementation, and evaluation of our health and nutrition programs and policies. Moreover, the results of the surveys will guide the USDF NRI in developing nutritious food products and appropriate technologies that may be adopted by entrepreneurs or business owners. To mention one popular product that FNRI has developed and transferred to interested adopters is the enhanced Nutriban, now with squash and carrot variants, which are being used by DepEd and the DOSWD in their feeding programs. There are more initiatives of FNRI that are in support of the findings of the National Nutrition Surveys towards nutrition improvement, such as iron fortified rice, complementary food blends, including snack food products made of rice and mongo or bigas mongo, stabilized brown rice bar, bakery products, and veggie noodles with squash, micronutrient growth mix used for home fortification of complementary foods of young children, among others. I encourage everyone to actively participate in this survey forum and learn about the latest results of the 2018 to 2019 ENNS. Let us enrich our minds so that we could serve as catalysts in transforming our existing programs and policies on health and nutrition into ones that can better address the pressing needs of the present time. Maraming salamat and naway maging malusog at ligtas tayong lahat.
Thank you for that very engaging message, Secretary De La Peña. We really appreciate your untiring support to all the research activities of FNRI. With this, we would like to award you with a certificate of appreciation. The Department of Science and Technology Food and Nutrition Research Institute presents this certificate of appreciation to Honorable Fortunato de la Peña, Secretary of the DOST, for sharing his inspirational message during the online dissemination forum on food consumption, vitamin A and iodine status, and iodine content of household salts 2019 expanded national 27th day of May 2021 at the Department of Science and Technology Food and Nutrition Research Institute. Signed, Imelda Angeles Agdepa, PhD, Director 4 and Scientist 2. For the meantime, let's have a quick stretch break while watching a video.
The FNRI Service Laboratory is an ISO IEC 17025 accredited laboratory which is composed of 3 laboratories. It is the focal agency of the Department of Science and Technology for Nutrition Labeling and is recognized by the Philippine FDA for nutrition labeling and by BFAR for marine food products analysis. It is the only laboratory in the Philippines that is capable to analyze serum vitamin A and urinary iodine excretion. Initially mandated to conduct researches on biological parameters and support the laboratory needs of various in-house food research and development projects, FNRI-SL has continuously expanded and has offered its services also to the public. The chemical laboratory is equipped with instruments that allow proximate determination and physical chemical analysis of foods. Also, our laboratory is equipped with state-of-the-art modern instruments such as high-performance liquid chromatography, gas chromatography, atomic absorption spectrophotometer, graphite furnace-equipped AAS, automatic analyzer, WYD iodine checker, and the UV-Vis spectrophotometer is currently used for developing methods and water quality assessment. In the biochemical laboratory, other modern instrumentation are being used in order to support the National Nutrition Survey, medical research institutions, LGUs, non-government and international organizations.
And now, to introduce our keynote speaker for today, may we please call on our director once again, Dr. Agdepa.
Yes, thank you, Frances. It is really a great pleasure and opportunity to introduce our keynote speaker today. Dr. Rosemary De Leon is presently the Undersecretary for National Development Policy and Planning at the National Economic and Development Authority. Dr. De Leon holds a PhD in economics from the La Trobe University in Australia, a Master's of Arts degree in economics from the University of the Philippines, School of Economics, and an MSc, a master's degree in statistics from the UP School of Statistics. She is also a 2019 Presidential Gawad SES awardee. Among her major responsibilities is shepherding the formulation of the Philippine Development Plan. The PDP is an elaboration of the country's priorities over the medium term and is the blueprint of government policies, programs, and projects. She also oversees the monitoring of the PDP implementation. In addition, she is in charge of providing technical advice on policy issues to both the legislative and executive branches of the government, especially the committees of the NEDA board. Presently, Dr. De Leon chairs the Task Group on Recovery under the National Task Force Against COVID-19. She also chairs the Technical Working Group on Anticipatory and Forward Planning and a member of the sub-TWG on Data Analytics under the Interagency Task Force on the Management of Emerging Infectious Diseases. Dr. De Leon also chairs the Social Development Committee Technical Board and the Technical Committee on Tariff-Related Matters, and is a member of the Development Budget Coordination Committee of the NEDA Board. She also heads the Secretariat of the Economic Development Cluster of the Cabinet. Under Secretary De Leon is currently a member of the board of the Philippine Economic Society, where she used to be the president. She is also a member of the Philippine Commission of the UNESCO. She was formerly the chair of the Macroeconomics Committee of the UNESCO and the vice chair of the Economic Committee of the APEC. With this, ladies and gentlemen, I'm presenting to you our honored keynote speaker, Undersecretary Rosemary De Leon. Morning, ma'am.
Good morning. Always a pleasure to be here before you. Secretary Carr would have liked to be the one to give this keynote speech, but he had other commitments equally important. So first, I'd like to give my greetings to DOST Secretary Boy de la Peña, DOST FNRI Director Dr. Agdepa, all the distinguished guests that are here today, colleagues from government, development partners, and partners in the private sector. Even those attending from Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao, I understand, I guess that's the advantage of this new normal. we get to open up this event to attendees from across the country. So, ladies and gentlemen, a pleasant morning to all. On behalf of the National Economic and Development Authority, I extend our warmest congratulations to the DOST FNRI in fervently processing and now disseminating the results of the food consumption and biochemical survey components of the 2019 Expanded National Nutrition Survey, or what we call the ENNS. Lest you misunderstand this for an electronic ENNS, it's actually expanded ENNS. A healthy and well-nourished population is a precondition to a lasting, productive human capital base. After we learned this, and this was back in 2015, actually early 2016, after we learned of the collective aspirations of Filipinos for a matatag, maginhawa at panatag na buhay, what we now refer to as the Ambisyon Natin 2040, we have set out the long-term development agenda. So between that time until 2040, and we have determined that to enable and empower every Filipino to achieve his or her own ambition, we need to have put in place policies, programs, and projects to achieve 4 strategic objectives. 1, inclusive growth. 2, to have a smart and innovative society. 3, for our people to live long and healthy lives, at least 80 years of productive life. And then 4, to live in a high-trust society. Now, focusing on the third item of that development agenda, which is to live a long and healthy life. For this current Philippine Development Plan 2017 to 2022, what we have set out as our desired outcomes or our strategic goals by 2022 is really want to improve access to healthcare and to address malnutrition and stunting. Because if we want Filipinos that by 2040, Filipinos will be enjoying 80 years of productive life, we really have to start now. We have to make sure that our children have a better fighting chance to be able to live long and healthy lives. Of course, we also want them to be smart and innovative. And that is why all the more reason to address malnutrition and stunting, especially among the young. In 2019, the prevalence of stunting and underweight among children under 5 years old is at 28 and 19% respectively. While there has been improvement, the progress has been slow, and the PDP targets, midterm targets actually were not met. In addition, in 2019, the prevalence of overweight and obesity among adults is at 36%. And this is actually pre-pandemic. I'm sure that with the lockdown, most probably this also went up. And as it is, that's already a 10 percentage point increase from 26.6% that was observed in 2008. Now, among other reasons, malnutrition results from the wrong types of food that we consume. As you will hear during the presentation of the survey results later, it will be evident that we will need to improve our population's food consumption patterns and vitamin A and iodine status and awareness, especially for the vulnerable, such as the children under 5 and the pregnant and lactating women. By the end of this forum, we will be able to answer the question, are we on track? Probably just a bit. While we do the assessment, we have to keep in mind that these are pre-pandemic results. We are going through a very unprecedented crisis. So I indulge the body, especially the DOST FNRI. I challenge you some more to look further ahead. Which of these indicators are sensitive to the health crisis that we are currently having? Which groups are more sensitive? And how do we address this given this new normal that we have? What can we do to prevent falling off track? What should we do in order to remain steadfast on this track? And what can we do in order to surpass what we have so far? Because most probably, we will be seeing the results that there's been progress again, but this is slow. And therefore, we actually need to get off this track, and we really need to accelerate our accomplishments. Combating malnutrition calls for a whole of government and a whole of society approach. Very cliche, but especially at this time, we know how true this is and how important this is. This should be guided by data and statistics from surveys and reports such as the 2019 ENNS. It is in this light that we want to emphasize the need for timely and consistent data and estimates. They should be comparable over time. And faced with uncertainties caused by this global pandemic, information and data are crucial for evidence-based decision-making, especially during a crisis. And so I also urge the data scientists and those especially from the FNRI also to come up with methodologies that make for continuous data collection, so we can sustain data collection even during a crisis such as this. So this unprecedented times has really forced us to make involuntary shifts in our lifestyle and behavior, not just in mobility, but also in recognizing the importance of health and nutrition for every Filipino. We need to bank on this with the help of timely and relevant data support. This is actually a golden opportunity to propel us even further to having a healthy and resilient Philippines. So once again, let me congratulate the DOST, FNRI, and the other partners involved in this endeavor for your unwavering efforts and incontestable dedication in producing the survey results, and we look forward to the succeeding survey results of the ENNS. Let us all continue to work together as stakeholders to nutrition. Thank you very much at magandang umaga sa ating lahat.
Thank you
Thank
so
you,
much,
ma'am.
Yusek Edilion, for that very evocative keynote message. In behalf of FNRI, we would like to present you the Certificate of Appreciation for gracing our event today. The Department of Science and Technology Food and Nutrition Research Institute presents this Certificate of Appreciation to Rosemary G. Edilion, PhD, Undersecretary for Policy and Planning, NEDA, for sharing her invaluable time and insights as keynote speaker during the online dissemination forum on food consumption, vitamin A and iodine status and iodine content of household salts, 2019 Expanded National Nutrition Survey, with the theme, What does the 2019 data say? Are we on track? Unmasking the dietary intake, vitamin A and iodine status and iodine content of salts among Filipino households before the pandemic. given this 27th day of May 2021 at the Department of Science and Technology, Food and Nutrition Research Institute. Signed, Dr. Imelda Angeles Agdepa.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you po.
My pleasure. Thank you. And congratulations once again.
I'm sure everyone is excited with the presentations for this morning. My dear colleagues, the long wait is over. We now present to you the much-awaited latest ENNS food consumption survey results. And to present the ENNS overview and sampling, let us all welcome our first speaker. She is the newly appointed Supervising Science Research Specialist of the Nutritional Assessment Section of the Nutritional Assessment and Monitoring Division of the DOST-FNRI, a registered nutritionist dietitian by profession, graduated MS Applied Nutrition at the University of the Philippines, Los Baños. She also earned her master's in development management from the Development Academy of the Philippines. Everyone, please welcome Ms. Maria Lilibeth P. Daspo.
Good morning. I will just share my screen. Okay, nakikita na po ba?
Yes po.
Okay. So I will be presenting the overview and methodology of the ENNS. Okay.
Ma'am Beth, excuse po, paayos po yung PowerPoint.
Okay, sige ha, sandali. Okay na po?
Yes po, ma'am. Okay na po.
Okay, so I will be presenting the overview and methodology of the National Nutrition Survey. Okay, so the Department of Science and Technology, Food and Nutrition Research Institute, as the premier research and development institute of the government in food and nutrition research and other S&T activities, we have a mandate to fulfill. So under the Executive Order 128, Section 22, we have to undertake the research that defines the citizenry's nutritional status with reference particularly to the malnutrition problem, its causes and effects, and to identify alternative solutions. And in Executive Order 352, our ENNS is a designated statistical activity that will generate critical data for decision-making of the government and the private sector. So the ENNS has evolved from having 3 components in 1978 to 9 components covering wider and more in-depth the nutrition and health dimensions. So over the years, the sample size increased. Now, this was already mentioned in the previous speeches, that in 1978, we covered almost 2,800 households and equivalent to 17,667 individuals. And then in the pool 2018-2019 ENNS, we covered 94,999 households. That's equivalent to 325,512 individuals. In the conduct of ENNS, we employed a pen and paper method of data collection, and the questionnaires are pre-coded, so by color, for the different components. And later, the method of data collection has also evolved from the pen and paper data collection to the use of the EDCS, or the electronic data collection system. So we have to stay at par with the technological advancements of the digital age. So this is an in-house, we developed this, and this was fully utilized in the 2013 ENNS. And then for the 2018, we have enhanced this, and the transmission, the data editing, the processing. So this serves, we were able to save some valuable time and resources because of the shifting from the paper-based to the electronic-based data collection system. And we use the EDCS results, so we were able to disseminate as early as 6 months after data collection. Okay, so that's the ENNS before. And now for the expanded National Nutrition Survey. So the new design, with the new design, reliable estimates were able, we are able to generate local level data estimates, and that's for the province and the HUCs, to be used by the local government units and other stakeholders. So these are the basis for their development plans. And at the same time, we are able to generate national nutrition survey, because there is a need to generate the annual health and nutrition data at the national level to cover the key health and nutrition indicators for monitoring national programs. And this will also provide us official statistics on SDG signed indicators for tracking changes or improvement. So two birds at one stone na ang ating na-generate. So the general objective of the ENNS is to provide the empirical data on the nutritional and health status of Filipinos for planning nutrition and development programs, and for timely policy decisions at provincial and HUC and the national levels. So that's the general objective. So I will not go over with the specific objectives, because the respective components that will be presented for this day will dwell on that. And for the sampling design, as I've mentioned, we have a rolling survey for 3 years. We have 40 provinces for 2 years, for 2018 and 2019. Then for 2020, which was that's 37 provinces. So yan na lang yung natira namin na supposed to be this was covered in 2020. So the target households per domain is average of 1,536 households. So in 2018, the PSA board issued resolution number 6 series of 2018 that approves the adoption of the survey design of the ENNS. And the crucial part of the ENNS survey design is the selection of provinces and HUCs. Okay, sorry ha. So the crucial part of the ENNS survey design is the selection of provinces and HUCs. So the selected provinces and HUCs should give unbiased national estimates for all the indicators. So each year from 2018 to 2020, yung rolling natin na survey years. So in this regard, we employed a methodology called the replicated sampling in selecting the provinces and the HUCs per year in order to gain efficiency in the generation of national level estimates for a given year. So this is done by grouping the provinces and HUCs with similar characteristics, so into replicates. So a total of 24 replicates were formed with at least 5 province and HUC in most of the replicates. So we have 8 random assigned replicates recovered for each year. So to validate the design, we use some test variables from the 2010 census of population and housing. So the test variables were the number of persons at the household level, number of births registered, the number of OFWs, number of women of reproductive age, the number of infants, number of children below the 5, and number of disabled members. So these variables would represent traits that are common and those that are relatively rare. Okay. Okay, so that's how we select the provinces and the HUCs. So medyo mabagal lang ang response. So we adopted the 2013 master sample of the PSA as our sampling design. So the 2013 master sample, this is a two-stage cluster sample design with barangays and enumeration areas, which are group of adjacent small barangays or EAs as the primary sampling units. So the PSU is composed of 100 to 400 households. The second stage then is the selection of the housing units, or the households within the sample PSU. So the full master sample has 16 replicates of PSUs and an average of 1,536, as I mentioned before. That's the households were targeted to be collected for all the components of the ENNS, except for the biochemical and dietary components. Kasi we collected data from half of the target because of high cost of laboratory analysis for the biochemical component and tedious manner of data collection for the dietary survey. Now for the response rates of the 2018 ENNS, we have a total of eligible households, 52,285, and out of that, we have 45,957 which are covered, and that's a response rate of 87.9%. For the individuals, more than 196,000 households are eligible, and out of that, we have 159,926 were covered, and that's equivalent to 81.5%. For the 2019 response rates, the households, it's about 52,463, and we have covered for about 49,000, and that's a higher response rate than the 2018. We have 93.5%. For the individuals, we have 209,527 eligible individuals, and out of that, we have covered 165,586, and that's equivalent to a response rate of 79%. So what and how are the data collected? So for the ENNS, ito yung full ENNS na lahat ng mga components, no? So for the anthropometry, it's a measure of the physical growth and body composition. That's for the mid-upper arm, waist, and hip circumferences. So we collected this to determine the prevalence of underweight, underheight, thinness, and overweight and obesity. So this was presented last year, the results. And for the biochemical, selected lang yung i-present namin ngayon, no, for the results. So we collected the blood and urine samples to assess prevalence of vitamin A deficiency, we have anemia, and other nutrient deficiencies. For the clinical and health component, we assessed the prevalence of elevated blood pressure, high fasting blood glucose, and dyslipidemia, as well as the behavioral risk factors. So these are smoking, alcohol consumption, physical inactivity, and unhealthy diet. So we measure the blood pressure of the individuals. Then we also collect blood, and we have some face-to-face interview for the behavioral risk factors. For the dietary, which will be presented later on, they will elaborate on this, the methodology of this component. For the food security, the government program, and the socio-economic, we have a face-to-face interview. So we, for the food security, we assess the status at the household level, as well as the coping mechanisms and strategies. For the government program participation, we assess the households and members' participation in selected nutrition and related programs. For the socioeconomic characteristics of households, we profile the households in terms of education and occupation of the household members, their type of housing unit, and the type of wall, roof, and ownership of different types of appliances. So information on households' assets are also used for the construction of wealth index as a surrogate measure for household income. Then for the IYCF, for the infant and young child feeding, and the maternal health and nutrition, we utilize the questionnaires using face-to-face interview to update the information on feeding practices of the children 0 to 23 and other related factors affecting the feeding practices. And we also determine the health and nutrition of mothers with children 0 to 3 years old, their health-seeking behaviors and caregiving practices. So that's the method of the full ENNS. So this afternoon, the selected biochemical markers and the dietary will be reported for this day, for the whole day. So we use the survey results to address nutrition problems by crafting policies and interventions. It is also used for planning, targeting, and implementing nutrition and related intervention programs, goals, and other commitments. And this is also used for monitoring and evaluation of impact of nutrition intervention programs. We also use the results as a tool in advocacy for policy development or directions. Then we also address nutrition problems by crafting policies and interventions. So ito po yung mga batas na gumamit ng mga survey results kasi sabi nga natin evidence-based. So we have the micronutrient supplementation, the Philippine Fortification Act of 2000, we have the ASIN Law, the Republic Act 10351 or the Syntax Law, the School Feeding Law, we have the First 1,000 Days Law, the National Policies on Infant and Young Children, or the Administrative Order number 2005-0014. We also use this for the Sustainable Development Goal, Philippine Development Plan, Philippine Plan of Action, and the Food Fortification Program. Okay, so the salient features of the ENNS and the ENNS. So this is just a brief comparison between the old design and the new survey design. So the ENNS is a one-shot survey every 5 years, while the ENNS is a rolling survey for 3 years. For the updating survey, we have a one-shot survey every 2.5 years within the 5 years of ENNS. So for the ENNS, no need to conduct this because this is already covered for in the rolling survey. In terms of sampling design, the ENNS uses the 2003 master sample, while the ENNS, we use the 2013 master sample. And in terms of coverage, the ENNS has 17 regions and 80 provinces. But for the ENNS, the same 17 regions, but this time 117 na yung domain. So that's broken down into 81 provinces, 33 highly urbanized cities, and the 3 other areas. That's the Cotabato City, we have Pateros, and Isabela City in Basilan. Then in terms of replicates, the ENNS has 4 replicates, but for the ENNS, we have 16. In terms of number of households, the sample households for the NNS is 40 to 50,000. For the ENNS, it's about 180,000 sample households, an average of 1,536 sample households per province. So that's about 60,000 sample every year, no? For the level of disaggregation, we have national and regional for the NNS, but for the ENNS, from the national, we will be able to generate the provincial level domains estimates niya. Okay, so yun po yung salient features. Now, on the updates of the ENNS, the COVID-19 pandemic has greatly affected the conduct of ENNS. So as I've mentioned before, the data collection for the 3rd year, that's supposed to be last year, was discontinued. So that's only 2 years of the 3-year collection periods were surveyed. So it's 2/3 of the assigned areas. Then for tracking the trends of nutrition and health indicators collected in the ENNS, the 2018 and the 2019 results are pooled to increase the level of precision. And the pooled estimates of the ENNS, these are comparable to the 2015 and the 2013 estimates. And for the remaining areas for the 3rd year of the rolling design, and the 2019 areas will be surveyed this coming June 2021 to gather the data that may be used to determine the possible effects of the pandemic on the health and nutrition status of the Filipino population. Okay, so with that, thank you very much. Over to you, Ms. May-Ann.
Thank you, Ms. Dasco, for giving us a very concise background on how the ENNS was conducted in order to come up with this national data used by both government and non-government entities in program planning and policy making. If you have questions, kindly input them in the Q&A box. Let us now move on to the main focus of today's morning session, which is the dietary survey results. To present the food consumption of Filipinos at the household level, let me introduce to you our second speaker. She is a senior science research specialist of the Nutritional Assessment Section of the Nutritional Assessment and Monitoring Division of the DOST-FNRI. She is a registered nutritionist dietitian, a graduate of Master in Food Science and Nutrition from the University of Ghent in Belgium, and a graduate of Doctor in Philosophy in Human Nutrition from the University of the Philippines, Los Baños. Everyone, please welcome Dr. Eva A. Goyena.
Okay, magandang umaga po sa ating lahat. Good day to all. So let me share first my slide. Okay, so thank you, Frances, for your kind introduction. So my presentation is a focus on the food consumption result or at the household level. And please note that we have 2-level dietary data in the expanded NNS. The household level, which I'm going to present, and the other one is the individual level dietary information, which will be presented by my colleague, Ms. Desnacido, after this presentation. So the dietary assessment is one of the 9 survey components of the expanded NNS to comprehensively assess the nutritional status of Filipinos. The other 8 are anthropometrics, biochemical parameters or the biomarker, clinical, food security, government programs, maternal, infant and young child feeding, along with socio-demographic and economic characteristics of the households. Primarily, the food consumption information at the household level is conducted to evaluate the current food intake of individuals in the households, to reflect the food available at the household level, examines the trends and changes in food availability and consumption over time, and to monitor the trends in the proportion of households meeting energy adequacy as input to track the country's progress in achieving the SDG goal on zero hunger. Why do we need to assess the food consumption at the household level? First, food consumption survey of of FNRI serves as the official statistical source of nationally representative data on food and nutrient intakes in the Philippines. Second, dietary assessment helps identify public health concerns from inadequate to excess consumption. Third, it provides insights on the changing dietary pattern of the population. And last, it aids in the policy and program development for poverty alleviation, food security, and health and nutrition strategies of the government and private organizations. So how do we collect food consumption data at the household level? So our trained nutritionist dietitians conduct one-day food weighing of all foods in as purchased or raw form before these foods are cooked for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Likewise, beginning and ending inventories of all non-perishable foods such as rice, coffee, sugar, milk, salt, and others are taken alongside food weighing. Then food recall is also done to account all foods eaten outside the home by any household members during the food weighing day. So all this information gathered from these three methods are aggregated or taken together to generate the total amount of foods eaten by all household members. So how do we analyze the household dietary data? So after a series of manual editing, machine validation, computer validation, the household dietary data is analyzed using the what we call HDES or the Household Dietary Evaluation System. HDES is a computer software used to convert all weights of food to as purchased weight in grams or raw form. Then the actual food consumed by the household is derived after deducting the leftover, given out food, and plate waste from the food weight. And then how do we estimate the energy and nutrient intake of each household? We use the expanded food composition table intended for the survey data, dietary data. So the values generated from the HDES were compared to PDRI 2015 to assess if the household is meeting or not the recommended energy and nutrient intakes. So as mentioned earlier by Ms. Dasco, the dietary component of the ENNS covered half of the total target households, which is the same coverage that of the biochemical component because of the high cost needed in the data collection, specifically on the personnel to conduct food weighing. So household members responsible in the food preparation were the respondents of this survey component. So for the dietary survey component of the ENNS, we covered 20,326 households in 2018 and 21,093 households in 2019 with a total of 41,419 households covered in these two periods, giving us an overall response rate of 73.5%. So that's for the coverage. Now let's proceed to the results of the food consumption survey at household level in 2018 and 2019 periods. Results revealed that the mean food intake in a day of Filipino households was 3,021 grams, again showing rice, fish, vegetables as the most consumed foods among the households, with 35.2% coming from rice, 11.2% from fish, dun sa mga may blue box, and 16% from vegetables in the 2018 and 2019 survey periods. Merge po yung 2018-2019 ENS. Among the other key food groups, we can see here that meat and meat products contributed 7% of the total household food intake, and these were consumed at 214 grams per day on average. Poultry was consumed at 113 grams per day and contributed 4% to the total food intake. Eggs consumed at 82 grams it's contributing 3% of the total intake. Milk and milk products at 188 grams per day is 6% of the total household food intake. Fruits at 182 grams contributed 4% of the total food intake. Then root crops and tubers, beans and nuts and sugars and syrups, dito po, were the least consumed by the households at only 1% of the total food intake. Then miscellaneous foods, which include all kinds of beverages and condiments, had 4% contribution to the total food intake. So this slide shows a decrease in the mean daily food intake of households in the recent 2018 and 2019 at 3,021 grams as compared to the 3,400 grams mean intake of households in 2015. So breaking this total food intake by food groups, the mean consumption of rice and products, corn and products, and other cereal products shown in the lower portion of the bar in beige color po, this one, as well as root crops, here, yung brown ding maliit doon sa taas, shaded in brown nga, have declined between 2015 and 2018-2019 periods. Similarly, mean intake of fish, meat, and poultry among the households was lower in the 2018-2019 survey periods at 665 grams per day here, as compared with the 2015 intake of these foods at 740 grams per day, though consumption of this food group is similarly proportioned at about 22% between 2015 and 2018 and 2019 period po. So milk and milk products intake in light blue, ito po, has slightly increased from 175 grams in 2015 to 188 grams in 2018 and 19. Also eggs in beige color here recorded an increased consumption between 2015 at 71 grams to 82 grams in 2018 and 2019. Fats and oils, sugars and sweets in the tea part of the stock bar have almost the same percentage contribution to the total food intake between 2015 and in the recent 2018 and 2019. Between rural and urban areas, the mean daily food intake did not differ at 3,030 grams and 3,006 grams in rural and urban areas respectively. Consumption of rice and cereals, including root crops and tubers, sugars and syrups, vegetables and fruits, shown in this slide were slightly higher among rural than urban households, while urban households have higher mean intake of the protein-rich foods, which include fish, meat, poultry in blue color, eggs shaded in beige, and milk products in light blue, as compared to the rural households in 2018 and 2019. Mean consumption of dried beans, yung nasa taas po, blue, color, nuts and legumes and miscellaneous foods in violet color um, were almost the same between urban and rural households. Difference in the intake of major food groups is also noted across wealth quintile. Intake of, as you can see in the slide, intake of rice and cereals was higher among the poorest and poor households at 1,269 grams versus 1,105 grams um, among the richest households in 2018 and 19, while the intake of protein-rich foods, which include fish, meat, poultry, eggs, milk, and legumes in pink color po, was twice higher among the richest income group at 1,383 grams, that of the poorest income group at 616 grams. Intake of fats and oils in yellow increase as wealth status increases, while consumption of fruits and vegetables in green color and is almost similar across wealth quintile. In terms of food sources at the household level, there's an almost 10 percentage point increase in the contribution of animal source food to the total food intake. From 22.4% in 2018, it went up to 31.2% in 2018 and 19, while plant sources in green shade decreased. The contribution of plant source food decreased in 2018 and 2019 at 68.5 as compared po dun sa 72.8% in 2015. So this slide shows the sources of energy at households. So the energy coming from carbohydrates, in green, protein, blue, and fats did not differ between 2015 and 2019, of which about 69% of the total energy intake of households comes from carbohydrates, 12 to 13% from protein, and 18 to 19% from fats. In terms of energy and nutrient adequacy in the Filipino diets, results revealed that only 2 in every 10 households, or 23.5%, meet the energy requirement in a day, while about 6 in every 10 households meet the protein requirement per day in the 2018-19 periods. So among the micronutrients, niacin or vitamin B3 has the highest percentage of households meeting the adequacy at 8 in every 10 households meet 100% adequacy of this nutrient in 2018 and 19. Next, vitamin A, riboflavin, B2 were met by only 2 out of 10 households in 2018 and 19, while 3 in every 10 households met the B1 or thiamine adequacy. Next, the proportion of household meeting vitamin C, calcium, and iron recommendations were low, an indication that these nutrients are inadequately provided by the average consumption pattern observed in Filipino households. So the mean one-day food intake of households, mean one day in grams, has decreased as shown in the previous slides, and so the corresponding energy and nutrient intake also decreased. So this slide shows the proportion of households meeting the required energy and the estimated average requirement for selected nutrients. So between 2015 and 2018-19, the proportion of households meeting the required energy decreased at 23.5% compared to the 31% proportion of meeting the energy requirement in 2015. Similarly, the proportion of households meeting protein requirements slightly reduced in 2018 and 19 at 57.6%. Particularly revealing is vitamin C and iron. Households meeting vitamin C, this one, sa red po, is twice less in 2018 and 19 at 15.3% than in 2015 at 32.5%. Iron remains to be a problematic nutrient among the Filipino households. Also, a decrease in the proportion of households meeting the requirement of thiamine, calcium, and vitamin A is observed in 2015 and 2019. Between rural and urban areas, the proportion of households meeting energy was slightly higher in rural than urban areas. There were more rural households who achieved 100% of the vitamin C adequacy at 16.5% and calcium adequacy at 14.2%, that of the urban households. So highlighted earlier was the higher intake of meat, fish, poultry among urban households. Kaya consistently, more urban households were able to meet the dietary requirement of protein and B vitamins than that of the rural households. While both in urban and rural areas, iron and vitamin A requirements were met by a small proportion of households. So this slide shows the mean per capita food intake and mean per capita energy intake in a day. So the amount of food in grams indicated by blue line shows a decreasing trend since 2003, and correspondingly, the mean per capita intake of energy decreased from the 1,865 calories. Yes, this one, 1,865 calories in 2015 to 1,716 kilocalories in 2018 and 19. This one is the trends in the daily per capita intake of the major food groups among Filipino households. If we look at the energy-giving foods, decrease were noted in the per capita intake of rice, denoted by yellow line, cereals in blue line, and root crops in dark blue, while fats, while fats and oils by denoted in violet line remains similar since 2008. Here po. The per capita intake of sugars and syrups in green line po shows a declining trend since 2003. In here, a decreasing trends in the per capita consumption of fish and products, meat and products po, has been observed since 2013, while poultry in orange line has increased over the years. This one, sa orange line. So the per capita intake of milk in green line is fluctuating over the years, though an increase is observed between 2015 and the 2018-19 survey periods. The per capita intake of eggs in pink line is increasing, while dried beans and nuts in brown line has been decreasing over the years. Next here, the per capita consumption of vegetables shows an increasing trend, while fruit consumption in orange reveals a decreasing trend over the past years. We also have data on household food waste, which is comprised of cooked and raw food items that the households did not consume, possibly because of spoilage, waste during cooking, or preparation and also plate waste. So based on the 2018 and 2019 results, the average plate waste in a day is 77 grams or about 5 tablespoons. And seemingly the higher consumed food group, which is the rice and cereals, had the largest amount of wastage among the households at 56.5 grams, followed by fish, meat, poultry, and vegetables at 8 grams. So that's all for the food consumption survey results of the 2018-2019 ENNS. So in summary, we can say that 1, dietary pattern of Filipino households remained a combination of rice, fish, and vegetables. 2, there are changes in the household food consumption wherein an increase is observed in the mean intake of eggs, milk and products, and miscellaneous food items, while a decreased mean intake is observed in rice and cereals, meat, poultry, fruits, and vegetables. Third, majority of the Filipino households did not receive 100% energy and nutrient adequacy. Then rural households have higher intakes of rice and products, root crops and tubers, sugars and syrups, vegetables and fruits than urban households. Urban households have, on the other hand, have a higher intakes of fish, meat, poultry, eggs, milk and milk products, including dried beans and nuts than rural households. Then last, poor households have higher intake of carbohydrate-rich foods that include cereals and products, while rich households have higher intake of protein-rich foods than their counterparts. So that ends my presentation. Maraming salamat. Thank you for listening. So back to you, Frances.
Thank you, Dr. Goyena, for delivering us the latest data and trends on the food consumption of Filipinos at the household level. If you have questions in mind, you can send it using the Q&A box below, and the speakers will try their best to answer it immediately or during the open forum. And the last but not the least presenter for this morning's session, she will provide us with the dietary survey results at the individual level. She is a science research specialist 2 of the nutritional assessment section of the Nutritional Assessment and Monitoring Division of the DOST-FNRI. She is a registered nutritionist, dietitian, and a graduate of MS Applied Nutrition at the University of the Philippines, Los Baños. Let us all welcome Ms. Josie P. Desnacido.
So thank you, Mylene. Good morning, everyone. So in the previous presentation, Dr. Guiana presented the results of the food consumption survey at the household level. And now I'm going to present the food and nutrient intakes of individuals across the different population groups. So the individual food consumption survey provides data on the intake, food quantities, and nutrient adequacies of the different population groups. So the individual food consumption survey is part of the ENNS. It provides information vital for shaping food and health guidelines, for planning and evaluating programs, for understanding consumption patterns, in developing strategies for health promotion and disease prevention, and to track progress in addressing SDG targets by 2030, particularly the goal number 2 and number 3. Okay, so for the methods, I'm going to discuss briefly how we conduct the individual food consumption survey of the ENNS. Okay, so this slide shows the coverage by population groups. So the individual food consumption survey covered all the age groups, namely the young children the school-age children, the adolescents, adults, elderly, pregnant women, and lactating mothers. So a total of 80,540 individuals were covered for the 2018 ENNS, while a total of 84,685 individuals were covered for the 2019 ENNS. So for the combined of full 2018 to 2019, a total of 165,225 individuals were covered. So for the coverage and response rates of 2018 to 2019 ENNS, so among population groups, so the response rate ranged from 69.3 to 89%. So lowest response rate was noted among adults, while highest response rate was reported from lactating mothers. So all in all, the response rate is 75.7%. So a total of 165,225 individuals was covered in 2018 to 2019. And this was disaggregated by population groups based on the Philippine Dietary Reference Index or PDRI. So for the method of data collection, at 2 non-consecutive days, 24-hour food recall was used to estimate the individual's food intake. So all members of the sampled households were interviewed to collect data for the first 24-hour food recall. And then for the second day recall, only 50% of the randomly selected households with 1-day recall were interviewed. So it involved a face-to-face interview where food consumed by an individual for the past 24 hours were recalled and recorded. So respondents were asked to remember and record exactly all foods and beverages they actually consumed during the past 24-hour period using the measuring tools like cups, tablespoons, matchbox, or by size and number of pieces, and these are converted into grams or millimeters for analysis. So for data processing, a computer system called Individual Dietary Evaluation System or IDES, developed by FNRI, was used to evaluate the energy and nutrient content of foods consumed by each individual subject. So this system contains the data of the expanded Filipino food composition table. So for the analysis, the mean and usual intake distributions of nutrients were estimated by using the pesticide software. So the method adjusts daily intakes to remove the effect of intra-individual variability. Therefore, the estimated distribution only reflects between person variability in intake. In computing for total dietary intake, so this should be noted, so dietary and food supplements are not accounted in the total dietary intake of individuals, but included in a separate study. So breast milk is not also included in the analysis of the total dietary intake of infants and young children. And now, so let's proceed to the results of the individual food consumption survey of the 2018 to 2019 ENNS. First, I'm going to present the contribution of each major food group to the total bean 1-day food intake across population groups. So looking at the intakes of infants 6 to 11 months, young children 1 to 2 years old, and preschool children 3 to 5 years old. So as we can see in the slides, the values at the top represent the average total food intake in a day. So each color in the graph represents the specific food groups. So for the infants 6 to 11 months, milk and milk products represented by yellow bar, and rice and other cereal products represented by light orange bar at the bottom constituted the highest share of the food intake for this age group. While among 1 to 2 years old, rice and other cereal products, followed by milk and milk products, and fish, meat, and poultry contributed the most of the food consumed by young children 1 to 2 years old in a day. While for 3 to 5 years old, consumption of rice and other cereal products provided about half of the daily food intake of this age group. About 17% of the total intake per day was contributed by fish, meat and poultry, and less than 10% came from milk and milk products. So fruits and vegetables contributed less than 5% of their total intake in a day. So translating into actual food intake, so among young children, 6 to 24 months, okay, so 97.7% are consuming cereal and cereal products, wherein 88.8% consume rice and products with mean intake of 62 grams per day, which is equivalent to 3/4 cup of boiled rice per day or 2 cups of porridge or lugaw. 63.9% are consuming milk and milk products with mean intake of 66 grams per day, which is equivalent to 1/3 glass of milk per day. 52.7% are consuming fish, meat, and poultry with mean intake of 23 grams per day. So 30.8% consume fish and products with mean intake of 8 grams per day, which is equivalent to less than 1/2 piece of fried small fish per day. For fruits, 8.8% are consuming with mean intake of 6 grams per day, which is equivalent to less than 1/4 of fruit per day. So imagine natin yung isang pirasong saging na lakatan, so halos wala pang 1/4 ang nakakain. So for vegetables, 28.3% are consuming. So with mean intake of 7 grams per day, which is equivalent to less than 1/4 cup of green leafy and non-leafy vegetables per day. So the actual intake of preschool children, 3 to 5 years old, so as we can see in the slide, so 99.7% are consuming cereals and cereal products, wherein 95.1% consume rice and products with mean intake of 106 grams per day, which is equivalent to 1 1/4 cups of boiled rice per day. So 47.4% are consuming milk and milk products with mean intake of 29 grams per day. So this is equivalent to 1/8 glass of milk per day. 81.5% are consuming fish, meat, and poultry with mean intake of 56 grams per day, wherein 49.5% consume fish and products with mean intake of 19 grams per day, which is equivalent to more than 1 piece of fried small fish per day. So for fruits, 12.2% are consuming with mean intake of 11 grams per day, which is equivalent to less than 1/4 small size of fruit per day. So for vegetables, 42.3% are consuming with mean intake of 14 grams per day, which is equivalent to less than 1/4 cup of green leafy and non-leafy vegetables. So looking at the intakes of school-age children, adolescents, and adults, so as we can see in the slide, rice and other cereal products contributed to half of their mean one-day food intake. 20% was from fish, meat, and poultry, while other food groups like fruits and vegetables contributed less than 10% of their total intake in a day. Consumption of milk and milk products was even more unpopular for these age groups, providing less than 3% of their total daily food intake. So translating into actual food intake, so now let's take a look at the actual food intake of school-age children, 6 to 12 years old. 100% of school-age children are consuming cereal and cereal products, wherein 95.8% consume rice and products with mean intake of 179 grams per day, which is equivalent to 2 1/4 cups of boiled rice per day. 89.8% are consuming fish, meat, and poultry with mean intake of 91 grams per day. 54.9% consume fish and products with mean intake of 29 grams per day, and this is equivalent to less than 2 pieces fried small fish per day. 46.8% consume meat and products with mean intake of 43 grams per day, which is equivalent to less than 1 matchbox size of boiled pork per day. So for fruits, 14.5% are consuming with mean intake of 15 grams per day, which is equivalent to 1/4 small size of fruit per day. For vegetables, 49.4% are consuming with mean intake of 22 grams per day, which is equivalent to 1/4 cup of green leafy and less than 1/4 cup of non-leafy vegetables per day. Let's see the actual food intake of adolescents. So 99.9% of adolescents are consuming cereal and cereal products, wherein 95.7% consume rice and products with mean intake of 261 grams per day, which is equivalent to 3 1/4 cups of boiled rice per day. 92.2% are consuming fish, meat, and poultry, wherein 57.3% consume fish and products with mean intake of 40 grams per day, which is equivalent to more than 2 pieces of fried small fish per day. 50.2% consume meat and products with mean intake of 59 grams per day that corresponds to more than 1 matchbox size of boiled pork per day. So for fruits, 14.5% are consuming with mean intake of 16 grams per day, which is equivalent to 1/4 small size of fruit per day. For vegetables, so 56.4% are consuming with mean intake of 36 grams per day, which is equivalent to less than 1 cup of green leafy and non-leafy vegetables per day. Now, let's take a look at the food intake of adults. So 99.9% of adults are consuming cereals and cereal products, wherein 95.9% consume rice and products with mean intake of 271 grams per day, which is equivalent to 3 1/4 cups of boiled rice per day. 93.9% are consuming fish, meat, and poultry with mean intake of 131 grams per day, wherein 67.3% consume fish and products with mean intake of 53 grams per day, which is equivalent to 3 pieces of fried small fish per day. 45.8% consume meat and products with mean intake of 53 grams per day that corresponds to more than 1 matchbox size of boiled pork per day. So for fruits, 16.9% are consuming with mean intake of 21 grams per day, which is equivalent to 1/2 small size of fruit per day. While for vegetables, 70.2% are consuming with mean intake of 58 grams per day, which is equivalent to less than 1 cup of green leafy and non-leafy vegetables per day. Okay, so among elderly, pregnant, and lactating mothers, so as we can see in this slide, rice and other cereal products had the highest share of the total daily food intake. Consumption of fish, meat, and poultry provided less than 20% of the total intake. For vegetables and fruits, so this accounted for less than 12 and less than 6% to the total daily intake respectively. So modest amounts were consumed among other food groups, including milk and milk products, starchy roots and tubers, fats and oils, and dried beans, nuts, and seeds. Okay, so let's see the actual food intake of elderly. So 99.9% of elderly are consuming cereal and cereal products, wherein 95.2% consume rice and products with mean intake of 203 grams per day, which is equivalent to 2 1/2 cups of boiled rice per day. 90.7% are consuming fish, meat, and poultry with mean intake of 98 grams per day. 72.2% consume fish and products with mean intake of 53 grams per day. So this is equivalent to 3 pieces of fried small fish per day. 33.5% consume meat and products with mean intake of 30 grams per day. So this is equivalent to more than 1/2 matchbox size of boiled pork per day. So in terms of fruits, 19.3% are consuming with mean intake of 24 grams per day. So this is equivalent to 1/2 small size of fruit per day. For vegetables, 69.7% are consuming vegetables with mean intake of 58 grams per day, which is equivalent to less than 1 cup of green leafy and non-leafy vegetables per day. So for the actual food intake of pregnant women, 99.9% of pregnant women are consuming cereal and cereal products, wherein 95.7% consume rice and products with mean intake of 235 grams per day. So this is equivalent to less than 3 cups of boiled rice per day. 92.3% are consuming fish, meat, and poultry with mean intake of 111 grams per day. So 67.5% are consuming fish and products with mean intake of 44 grams per day. So this is equivalent to more than 2 pieces fried small fish per day. 42.9% consume meat and products with mean intake of 45 grams per day. So this is equivalent to less than 1 matchbox size of boiled pork per day. So for fruits, 23% are consuming with mean intake of 35 grams per day. So this is equivalent to more than 1/2 small size of fruit per day. So in terms of vegetables, 71.2% are consuming with mean intake of 55 grams per day. So this is equivalent to less than 1 cup of green leafy and non-leafy vegetables per day. Okay, so let's take a look at the food intake of lactating mothers. 99.8% of lactating mothers are consuming cereals and cereal products, wherein 95.7% consume rice and products with mean intake of 282 grams per day. So this is equivalent to 3.5 cups of boiled rice per day. 90% are consuming fish, meat, and poultry with mean intake of 109 grams per day. So 63.4% are consuming fish and products with mean intake of 45 grams per day, which is equivalent to more than 2 pieces of fried small fish per day. 41.5% consume meat and products with mean intake of 43 grams per day, which is equivalent to less than 1 matchbox size of boiled pork per day. So in terms of fruits, 13.9% are consuming with mean intake of 16 grams per day. So this is equivalent to less than 1/2 small size of fruit per day. In terms of vegetables, so 71.3% are consuming with mean intake of 58 grams per day. So this is equivalent to less than 1 cup of green leafy and non-leafy vegetables per day. Okay, so now let's take a look at the energy intake and adequacy across population groups. So translating this food intake into energy intake, so as we can see in the slide, the blue bar at the bottom represents the actual mean energy intake, which is the average amount of energy consumed by the subject from all the foods that they have consumed in a day. So the green bar is the estimated energy requirements, or the EER, which is the daily energy intake level that meets the requirements of half of the healthy and normal weight individuals in a particular life stage or sex. So this is based on calculations taking into considerations the individual's energy intake, the energy expenditure, the age, the sex, the weight, the height, and the physical activity level. While the red bar represents the recommended energy intake, or the REI. So this is the daily energy intake level, which is considered adequate for the maintenance of health and well-being of almost all of the healthy persons in the population. So the graph shows that mean energy intake of all population groups was inadequate based on the REI and EER. So we know that breast milk contributed to the energy intake of young children, particularly 6 to 11 months and 1 to 2 years old. However, breast milk was not accounted in the individual food consumption survey. Now let's take a look at the food sources of total energy intake. So this top 5 food sources was based on the percent contribution of the food intake to the total food intakes. So as we can see in the slide, so among children and adolescents, rice, which is the primary staple food of the Filipinos, was the top food source of total energy intake. So aside from rice, milk was included as a top food source of energy among children 6 months to 5 years old. Among school-age children and adolescents, aside from rice, pork, cooking oil, and corn grits were included in the top source of total energy intake. Similar with the results in children and adolescents, in terms of top 5 food sources of energy in adults, elderly, pregnant women, and lactating mothers, again, rice was the top food source of total energy intake. So please note the 3-in-1 coffee was included as the top food source of energy in all these groups except pregnant women. So after energy, now let's proceed to the protein intake and adequacy across population groups. So protein has many roles in our body. It helps repair and build the body's tissues, allows metabolic reactions to take place, and coordinates bodily functions. So this slide shows that 7 out of 10 young children and school children met the recommended protein requirement. So protein inadequacy was most notable among pregnant and lactating women, with only 17.2% of pregnant women and 19% of lactating women meeting the recommended protein intake. Okay, so this aggregated by age groups. So 4 out of 10 infants, 6 to 11 months, or 43.7% met the protein requirements, while 7 out of 10 young children, 1 to 2 years old, and 8 out of 10, 3 to 5 years old, met the protein requirement respectively. So now let's take a look at the food sources of protein intake. Okay, so as we can see in the slide, rice was the top food source of protein intake among children and adolescents, though protein content in rice is low, but since it is the staple food of the Filipinos and taking in large amounts, hence it is the top source of protein. So aside from rice, milk was included as a top food source of protein among children 6 months to 5 years old, and among school-age children and adolescents, so aside from rice, pork, chicken egg, chicken meat, and hot dog were included in the top source of protein. Okay, so similar to children and adults, rice was a top food source of protein intake among adults, elderly, pregnant women, and lactating mother. So protein, pork, chicken egg, chicken meat, and fish like tilapia and galunggong were included in the top source of protein. Okay, so now let's take a look at the percent of nutrient contribution to the total mean energy intake. So as we can see in the slide, the main source of energy across population groups was from carbohydrates, okay, followed by fats, and then protein. So let's proceed with the micronutrient inadequacy across population groups. So the micronutrient inadequacy were computed using the estimated average requirements or EAR cutoff point method. So the population groups with intake below the EAR for a given nutrient were considered to be inadequate. So let's start with the proportion of population groups with inadequate dietary intake of vitamin A based on estimated average requirements or EAR. So as we can see in the slide, a high prevalence of vitamin A inadequacy across population groups, particularly among school children 10 to 12 years old, adolescents 13 to 15 years old, and elderly. So intake of dietary, health, or food supplements, again, were not accounted in the analysis. Okay, so for vitamin C, so this slide shows that there was a high prevalence of vitamin C inadequacy across age group except among young children 1 to 2 years old. Okay, for iron, the results showed that there was a high prevalence of iron inadequacy across population groups. So take note that, again, in this study, we only accounted the iron intake from the food and beverages consumed by individuals. Okay, so for calcium, this slide shows a high prevalence of calcium inadequacy was noted across population groups. So as we can see in the graph, adult and elderly had the highest prevalence of calcium inadequacy, while young children had the least. For thiamine, so this slide shows that across age groups, a high prevalence of thiamine inadequacy in the diet was noted. Elderly had the highest prevalence of thiamine inadequacy, while young children had the least. Okay, so for riboflavin, so the slide shows that there was a high prevalence of riboflavin inadequacy across age groups. So pregnant women had the highest prevalence of riboflavin inadequacy, while young children had the least. Okay. So for niacin, so this is the only nutrient with the lowest prevalence of inadequacy, having less than 42% of the population not meeting the niacin requirement per day. So rice is a staple food of Filipinos, which is a major contributor to niacin. However, majority of young children, 6 to 11 months, and 1 to 2 years old children had inadequate niacin intake due to low intake of other sources of niacin like meat, poultry, liver, and legumes. So generally, the diet of young children, 6 to 11 months, and 1 to 2 years old children is not yet varied as the diet of other age groups. Okay, now I'm going to present the major food sources of micronutrient in the diet of the different population groups. Okay, so the slide shows that among children and adolescents, we can see in the slide that milk, chicken egg, chicken liver, and pork liver are the key food sources of vitamin A in the diet of children and adolescents. Note that fruits and vegetables, which are good sources of vitamin A, were lacking in the list of top food sources of vitamin A in children and adolescents. Looking at the food sources of vitamin A in adults, elderly, pregnant, and lactating mothers, so a similar result was observed in school children and adolescents, wherein pork liver, and chicken egg were included in the top food source of vitamin A. But again, fruits and vegetables were missing in the list of the top food sources of vitamin A, except for malunggay, wherein it was included in the top 5 sources of vitamin A intake in elderly. Now, let's take a look at the top 5 food sources of vitamin C. So the results show that for young children, milk was included in the top contributors of vitamin C. We can also observe in the slide that banana saba was included in the top food source among children and adolescents. So malunggay and Indian mango, which is known as a good source of vitamin C, was included as one of the main sources of vitamin C in school children and adolescents. Okay, we're looking at the food sources of vitamin C in adults, elderly, pregnant, and lactating mothers. So the slide shows that malunggay, banana saba, taro, or gabi leaves were included in the top 5 food sources of vitamin C in adults, elderly, pregnant, and lactating mothers. Okay. Now let's take a look at the top 5 food sources of iron. The results show that among children and adolescents, rice is the top food source of iron. So we know that the amount of iron in rice, especially well-milled rice, is fairly low. But since there was a great consumption of rice, it became the top food source of iron. Aside from rice, milk were also included in the top food source of iron among young children. Other major food sources of iron, as shown in the slide, include processed meat, lean meat, chicken eggs, chocolate-flavored drink, and pandesal. Okay, so in terms of the food sources of iron in adults, elderly, pregnant, and lactating mothers, so as we can see in the slide, the results show that rice and pandesal were included in the top food source of iron. Heme iron from animal sources, which is a good source of iron, like chicken, egg, and pork lean, were included in the top food source of iron. But fish, which is another source of iron, was not included in the top food source, while the non-heme iron from plant sources were also missing in the top 5 food sources of iron in these groups. Okay, so now let's take a look at the top 5 food sources of calcium. So among young children, milk was the top food source of calcium because they are consumed in large amount. For school children and adolescents, rice is the primary source of calcium, again because rice was most consumed than milk and milk products. So canned sardines also belong to the top food sources. They are also rich in calcium. Okay, so looking at the food sources of calcium in adults, elderly, pregnant, and lactating mothers. So this slide shows that again, rice is the primary source of calcium since it is the staple food among Filipinos. Milk, sardines, dried dilis, and malunggay were also included in the top food source of calcium. Okay, so in summary, cereal and cereal products contributed the most to the Filipino diet. Majority of which were rice and rice products. The mean energy intake of all age groups was inadequate based on the recommendations. So protein inadequacy was most notable among pregnant and lactating women. More than 90% of adolescents and adults have inadequacies of calcium, iron, and vitamin C. Okay, so iron was the least met micronutrient in the diet of all population groups, while niacin was the most met. Rice remains the top food source of energy, iron, and calcium in all population groups, excluding the intakes of young children, where the primary source was from milk and milk products. Pork liver and chicken liver were included in the top sources of vitamin A in all population groups. The top food sources of vitamin C in all population groups were malunggay leaves and banana saba, excluding the young children, where the primary source was from milk and milk products. Okay, so that's end my presentation. Thank you very much and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you so much, Ms. Desnacido. We were indeed well informed today with the latest updates on the food consumption of Filipinos. Identifying which red flags we should immediately address could help prevent worsening of the country's nutrition situation and pave the way towards achieving our commitment to end hunger in the Philippines by year 2030. To summarize this morning's discussions and to provide recommendations, may we please call on our director, Dr. Imelda Angeles Agdepa.
Thank you, Frances. Once again, may I be permitted to actually share screen for my presentation? Natanggal na ba? Okay, so can you now see my screen? Hello? Hello?
Yes po, ma'am. It's okay.
Okay na. Sige, so So good morning once again. I'm presenting to you the summary and recommendations. No. So first of all, I'd like to acknowledge actually the presence of our consultant in statistics. We have here Dr. Pacificador. We always call him Sir June. No. So good morning once again. So let me tell you what does our data say. No. So by presenting to you this. Goal 2 of the Sustainable Development Goal, end hunger, achieve food security, and improve nutrition, and promote sustainable agriculture. Under that, we have actually a target. By 2030, we have to end hunger and ensure access by all people, in particular, the poor and people in the vulnerable situations, including infants, to safe, nutritious, and sufficient food for all year round. And the sub-target for that is actually an indicator on the proportion of households meeting 100% recommended energy intake. This was presented a while ago. Now take note that our baseline is actually 31% in 2015. So going there, going back to the presentations of Dr. Guena, so you can see that only about 23% are actually meeting the 100% of the REI, or what we call the ER. The recommended energy intake is actually the level of intake of energy or nutrient which is considered adequate for the maintenance of health and well-being of healthy persons in the population. And also the estimated average requirement, the daily nutrient level that meets the median or average requirement of healthy individuals. Okay, sorry for that. Okay, so going further, on the proportion of households meeting 100% REI and ER by wealth status, now you can see in terms of energy, it seems that those who are actually belonging to the middle to the richest quintile are actually having slightly higher energy intake as compared to the households who are actually in the poorest wealth quintile. And the same holds true with protein. If you can see the richest, you can see here, the middle to richest quintile, you see about 59, the range of 59.6 to 69.7, compared to the poor and the poorest sector, wherein 46.1 and 53.5%. So for iron, it seems that most of the quintiles from poorest to richest are almost similar. But if you can see the richest quintile, it has a higher households belonging to this quintile is having a higher percentage meeting 100%. And for calcium, also the same scenario as iron, wherein the richest quintile is having a higher proportion of having a higher intake of calcium. Now, with regards to households meeting the ER, for vitamin A, you can see that only the richest quintile have about 26.1 and the poorest have only about 22.1. And for vitamin C, the richest quintile have reached about 20% of the households having ER, meeting the ER, while the others are already about 15.5, and the middle, the poor quintile is about 13. No, so it's really very low. So I don't need actually to discuss this more. It's just because it has been presented by Dr. Goyena. And looking at that, no, going back, so are we really meeting the proportion of households 100% recommended energy intake? Now take note that the baseline is about 31%. So for our pooled data for 2018 and 2019, we only have 23.5% of the households are actually meeting the 100% recommendation. So if we compare 31 to 23.5, then we have a decline of about 7.5 percentage point for 4 years. Okay. So another indicator is the prevalence of stunting. That's actually the height for age or the less than -2 standard deviation of the CGS. So our baseline is 33.4 in 2015. Now, taking a look on the trend, you can see that in 2015, 33.4. Our pooled data in 2018, 2019 is about 29.6. Comparing this, we only have gained 0.95 percentage point reduction per year because it's actually 4 years. Now, taking a look on our PPAN target, the PPAN is about 21.4%. So we need to have to reduce our percentage or our proportion of stunting by 2.7 reduction per year. And this is actually to meet also our SDG by 2030. So are we really meeting? So take note that from 33.4, it went down to 29.6 and a reduction of about 3.3 percentage point. Going further on the prevalence of malnutrition for children under 5 years, the -2 SD from median CGS, that's actually the wasting. So our baseline was 7.1. Looking at the trend, you can see in 2015, 7.1. Now we have 5.7. From 2015 to 2019, we have a 0.35 reduction per year. Our PPAN target is 5. So if we like to reach this, our percentage reduction per year must be 0.23, and therefore we are somewhat meeting the target for PPAN at 5%. So this is a good news, and therefore you can see that from 7.1 it went down to 5.7, right? So it's very good. So with regards to the prevalence of malnutrition in terms of overweight, so our baseline was 3.9. So you can see here, way back in 2015, it's about 3.9. Today, this year, we have 3.5. And therefore, there is a reduction of about 0.1 reduction per year, or about 0.4 percentage point from 2015 to 2019. Our PPAN target is actually 3.9%, and therefore we must incur about 0.13 increase per year. So let us see. There is actually 3.9, and now we have 3.5. So it seems that we are, of course, optimistic to reach our target. So can we really end hunger? That's a very big problem on us, no? And can we improve nutrition? That remains to be really answered, no, by our implementing agencies, no, and policymakers. So our executive order number 101, enacted last January 10, 2020, creating an interagency task force on zero hunger. It is chaired by Cabinet Secretary Carlo Noglares, and the vice chair is actually the Department of Social Welfare and Development and the Department of Agriculture. And there are 12 members. DOST is one of the members of the TWG. No? So the aim of this task force, or this interagency task force, is actually that it encourages or mobilizes all government policies, initiatives, and projects on attaining zero hunger And all projects and initiatives or policies shall be coordinated, responsive, and effective. So what do we have that could be enhanced? Of course, we have our very popular Nutriban. No, it's actually a product of our continued R&D on the natural enrichment of food. And we have released 2 variants of this Nutriban already. It's a carrot variant and the squash variant. And the promoter of this is actually present now. We have here Dr. Mario Capansana, the previous director. And we have to actually enhance the support that we are giving for farmers and to businesses. No? So the post-harvest storage and the mechanized agricultural production must actually be installed. And there are some food innovation centers already, and we need to have this more in order to cater to some oversupply of foods during seasons when harvest seasons, no? And we have also food innovations for food preservation. If you can just recall, during the pandemic last year, we have a lot of vegetables coming from Benguet that were actually, put to thrash. So there's a need for us to really do some sort of food preservation, either in a micro or macro scale. So LGUs to strengthen nutrition programs. Of course, we encourage LGUs to use evidence-based and area-specific as well as problem-focused nutrition programs. And we like to continue our program on food for work or cash for work during the pandemic. But I think there is a need for better distribution mechanisms and, of course, the allotment for the different needy population must really reach the needy population. So it must be used for its intended use. Yeah? So we have to strengthen collaboration efforts with other government agencies and other stakeholders. So what to do more? Of course, we have to employ registered nutritionists like this. So we always cater to this because there is no professional who can really advocate for proper nutrition if not the registered nutritionist dietitian. So if we employ them at the municipal level for the implementation of the nutrition programs and to provide nutrition education to families and individuals. Providing nutrition education is really very, very important, and have this education campaign be simple enough to create actions. It's useless to impart education if there are no actions because people do not understand, right? So there is also a need to provide good nutrition in simple messages through the use of nutrition materials. We have here a lot of nutrition materials at FNRI. And examples of these are Pinggang Pinoy, the nutrition guide for Filipinos, the recipes using leftovers to lessen food wastage, etc. We have to install programs for communities on sustainable livelihood that would enable households to gain profit or other resources to purchase their own food. And mobilize the community to do home or community food production programs like backyard, community, school or urban vegetable and fruit gardens, and poultry or other livestock raising to foster food sufficiency. I have seen a community garden wherein the LGU or the barangay captain is the one actually encouraging the community to plant in a certain area in the barangay for people to actually get their supply of vegetables. So with this, my dear friends, I would like to say with the heart that we at FNRI thank you so much for your participation. And keep in touch with us on all the different data. We'll be with you in assisting all the data needs you require from us. And this afternoon, we still have more data on the biochemical markers as well as the salt level of iodine in salt. Maraming salamat po. Over to you, Frances.
Thank you, Dr. Egdepa, for constructively wrapping up this morning's session. So we now move to the question and answer portion. So some questions were already addressed by our speakers. So
Mylene, how are they going to raise the question? Is it in the chat box or are they going to have a reaction to raise their hands or what?
Through the chat box po, Doc, and the Q&A box.
Okay.
So yes, some questions were already addressed po by our speakers. And please key in your questions po for those who want to ask questions pa po.
Siguro you can read the unanswered questions in the chat box or in the Q&A box.
So in the chat box, hope as this can also be shown so we can gauge whether differences between 2015 and 2018, 2019 are significant. So this was already addressed by the speaker. So she answered changes in the food consumption SD and 95% of the estimates will be included in the PowerPoint to be uploaded in the e-nutrition website. Most of the changes, decrease or increase, were statistically significant between 2015 and 2018 to 2019.
I can read the others, Mylene, because I can sort the chat box. So good morning. I would like to ask if you think the reduced food intake will result to a decrease over and obesity prevalence. Dr. Beng? Hello. So I just like to answer that one. So the question is, somebody, Miss Rita Pape, asked whether the reduced food intake will result to a decreased over and obesity. That actually should be taken into in-depth analysis. It's just because we know very well that overweight and obesity is multifactorial. It's not only coming from food intake, but it's also coming from different factors like physical activity, right? So that's the answer to the question of Ms. Rita Pape. Thank you so much, ma'am, for that. So if chicken and pork liver are major sources of vitamin A, should it be promoted more as a food for people since it seems effaced by children and people? Josie.
Yes, Doc A should be promoted because chicken liver and pork liver are good sources of vitamin A. Pero mas makukuha pa rin po natin yung vitamin A sa mga plant sources o sa mga green leafy vegetables po. So aside from the chicken liver at saka pork liver, so pwede pwede rin po natin talaga na i-promote ang mga malunggay. So ito po yung mga ating mga green leaf vegetables, ang ating pong mga kalabasa sa ating mga lalo na po sa mga bata.
Thank you so much, Josie, for that. Parang ako na yun nag-moderate.
Thank you po,
so
Doc
much,
A.
Josie. Thank you so much. And we like to inform you also that if you actually take your vitamin A from plant sources, please take note that vitamin A is a fat-soluble vitamin. So in order for it to be absorbed, we have to actually add fat. That means to say, pwede din nating igisa para sa ganon ay makukuha natin yung maraming vitamin A sa ating mga green leafy vegetables or the colored vegetables. Now, compared mo with the liver and the pork liver, these are already readily observable. So, I think, sabi nga ni Josie, this can be promoted. Thank you so much for that.
So, another question. What are the action plans of FNRI to address this decreasing household intake of foods and nutrient and to achieve the target food and nutrient intake? Dr. Beng, would you like to answer?
Okay, for that question, thank you, Mai, for throwing that question po. So, for that specific interventions, maybe to address the decreasing intake, food intake in the among Filipino households, we are ever since naman we are saying that addressing, ensuring food and nutrition security should be a multi-sectoral approach with all the with all the help or with the help of the different key sectors of the government, including Department of Agriculture. So with this question, I'd like to maybe emphasize the the food system, kasi ito yung nafo-focus kasi nga decrease intake through the year. So there should be improvement in the food system, not only ensuring that foods are available at the household, but it should be accessible also. So it's nakita po natin which food groups shown decreasing trends, and mostly sila po yung mga protein rich, sila yung medyo not accessible because of high price. So and then ano naman yung mas commonly consumed among the poorest households. So ito po ay nagsasabi sa atin na ang food system, policies and programs should be siguro revisit or what they call this one, strengthen pa po yung mga para lahat po ay towards food and nutrition security. That and then again yung mga the access yung prices of nutritious foods should be mas babaan para maging accessible sa households. At nabanggit po kanina ni Dr. Agdepa yung promotion of backyard home gardening. Ang laki din pong bagay nito kasi nga siguro pababa yung consumption pattern ng vegetables because maybe ang pinaka main factor here is the price. So hindi siya accessible, hindi siya affordable. So dapat at the household level i-promote po natin ito, household and community gardening, para kahit man lang po sa gulay, hindi na po bibilhin ng mga family, meron na po silang ready available para maging mas nutritious po yung i-prepare ng mga mothers. Yun lang po ang ko. And then for the FNRI products and innovations, ang we have this one, yung inut po, at marami pang mga food innovations na pwede pong i-adapt at the local level para maging mas accessible po yung mga nutritious food. Yun lang po. I hope I was able to answer po yun kasi medyo po. So, Mai?
Thank you, Dr. Goyena.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Beng. In addition to that, as FNRI DOST is really a research agency providing data for local program planning, no, and evaluation. So we continuously provide you with this data for your use at the local as well as at the national level to create policies, plans, and programs. Simultaneously, we actually use our data in producing nutritious food products and develop technologies. And as I have said a while ago, we have a lot, and our Secretary, Fortunato de la Peña, a while ago, has mentioned all the different food products that we have developed to address the malnutrition problem. And we need actually the implementing agency to actually dwell more in circulating or distributing these products to our populations who are in need. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Agdepa. So, one more question. What can be attributed to the decrease in vegetable consumption from 2015 and 2018 to 2019? Who would like to answer?
Yes, nabanggit ko din po kanina dun sa una kong sagot na price is the main factor siguro na hindi nagiging accessible ang mga gulay natin, vegetables. And then siguro hindi man ako farmer, o baka meron din natin nakikita, baka may decreasing production of vegetables. Kaya nagiging mas mataas, not affordable. And also maybe we have to look at the food value chain in the food system whereby maybe hindi problema yung availability of vegetables, but maybe kung paano siya tinatransport, yung mga losses along the chain, kaya nagiging mas unaffordable ang gulay natin. So maybe mga nandito yung role ng mga technologies and innovation, how to reduce food waste, spoilage. So we have to improve the post-harvest, di man kami po sa agriculture, but maybe i-connect natin yung mga dots here kung bakit hindi nagiging accessible and affordable yung mga vegetables, including fruits din po. Di po ba? Pag season nito, lagi naman natin binabanggit, pag season ang kamatis, ang mangga, bagsak ang presyo. Pag hindi na, so mahal na naman. So ganun po siguro. Siguro ito po yung isang important component in the food system kung paano maging continuous all throughout the year yung food supply. Kasi nga, it's a function of presyo po ito eh. So, yun po. And then along that, kailangan i-promote nga, nabanggit ko kanina, yung community, household gardening, kasi ito yung immediate po eh, na pwedeng ma-address yung food insecurity. So pag na-promote natin bakit kailangan magtanim at mag-produce ng sarili ng pagkain, then magiging mas sustainable po siguro ang food system natin. So hand in hand, dapat magtutulungan po, as mentioned by Dr. Agdepa, the different key factors. In multi-sectoral, integrated, should be comprehensive. Alam po natin lahat yun, especially yung mga nutritionists and mga nutritionists and also other government employees na nandyan, may influence sa policymakers. Siguro we have to review and analyze pa more yung aming mga data that we are presenting so that you can use this as evidence to guide your local government units or your local chief executives po, based on these results. Yun lang po.
Thank you, Doc Beng. At this point, baka po pwede namin i-invite din sa virtual stage si Ma'am Chari Duante and Ma'am Beth Dasco para po maka-answer din tayo ng mga questions.
Could you please include also Dr. June Pacificador? Because
yes.
There's a question actually here. Baka si Sir pwedeng mag-answer din. Thank you so much.
Okay po. So,
you can actually read the question, Frances.
Yes, Doc. So another question came in. So he says, are the percentage point reduction in achieving SDGs significant?
Yes.
Yes, Ma'am Chari? Ma'am, nakamute po kayo.
Sorry, good morning. So in the point estimate, we include the test of reliabilities. So from there, kasi po, ang nilagay lang namin doon is the point estimate, is the proportion. But we can include the CDs in our final presentation. But more or less, depende po kung anong indicator doon nakalagay. So the test of significance will be based on the reliability test that we will be including. So for sa presentation po kanina, point estimate lang po yun. So we will include it.
So there's also a question, Francis, on the follow-up na precision. Can you please read that on the Q&A? It's actually in the Q&A chat box.
Actually, ma'am, we have already answered the first one. So may I request Sir June for the follow-up? Yes.
Yung follow-up question.
Yes.
Okay.
Hello, can you hear me? Yes.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
I have seen some questions regarding the on the statistical aspect of the design. With regards to the question as to what is the effect of precision on the national and the regional level estimates. Well, of course, if we simply look at the combined 2018-2019, we actually pulled them. The national level, the precision of the national level estimates are quite comparable with 2015 and 2019. And while in the 2018-2019, it only covered about 2/3 of the provinces covered in 2017. But the very nature of using a replicated sampling design to actually minimize the between province variation and actually increasing the sample size in the sampled provinces as compared to 2015 has brought about some improvements in precision that even if it's not the complete province, somehow the level of precision between the two periods are almost similar. Of course, we expect that there might be some lowering of precision because in the design stage, we have to make a balancing between two major concerns of the ENNS, and that is actually the generation of province level estimates vis-a-vis and its effect on the national and regional level estimates. But definitely, for the regional level estimates, we still have to make some analysis on how it two things it can be done, because obviously there will definitely be effect on precision when we actually pull them at the regional level. For the national level, that's okay, but the regional level we'll still have to study that further.
Thank you, Doc.
We have a question from Sir Hector Maglalang. Was there a study to determine adequacy of intake of micronutrients with those taking vitamin supplements and food intake, particularly for preschool children?
Josie?
So good morning po. In 24-hour food recall, so tinatanong naman po namin yung mga nag-i-intake po ng vitamin A, mga vitamin supplements or health supplements. So we will do a in-depth study regarding this for these questions to determine the adequacy of intake of micronutrients. So kung yung mga nagte-take ba ng vitamin supplements, so or any supplements, kung meron po ba siyang effects sa micronutrient adequacy.
Thank you, Ma'am Josie. Meron pa po ba tayong i-add?
In addition po dun sa sinabi ni Ms. Jo, kasi we are only processing for now yung presentation for today. Later on, we will do some more yung mga in-depth analysis dun sa mga data. Doon na siguro makonsider yung ating mga nutrient, yung ating mga food supplements at mga health supplements na taken by individual members. We have collected this data, pero sa ngayon hindi muna namin ginagalaw kasi inuna namin yung presentation for today. But we will consider that sa mga iba pa naming mga studies. Thank you.
Thank you, Ma'am Beth. So another question, this is from Miss Ellen Vilate through YouTube. With the increase of hunger in 2020, can FNRI do a fearless forecast in terms of reduction of the nutrient consumption? Can FNRI do a fearless forecast in terms of reduction of the nutrient consumption?
Can we do forecasting? Okay, actually, it's a well-known fact, right? During this pandemic, of course, we actually always see on TV that many people are going hungry. It's just because of, loss of job and also inaccessibility to food supply. And based on our ENNS report, it's very glaring also that food insecurity is really a dominant factor in terms of experiencing the lockdown because of food inaccessibility and job loss. So let's see what will happen to our National Nutrition Survey this year in 2021, covering actually the 37 provinces. So I think we can answer that siguro after the survey. And as I said, for the forecast, we have seen already what's the scenario all about. Thank you, Ellen.
Another question from the chat box. Do you have local data for cities like Calamba City that we can use in our planning and our basis so that our LCEs will give more priority to nutrition?
Beth, did we cover Calamba City already previous year?
Ma'am, Calamba City is not highly urbanized, so it is not included in the target areas.
Okay, so they can get hold of the province of Laguna, right?
Yes.
As their local estimate.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So from the Q&A box, if chicken and pork liver are major sources of vitamin A, should it be promoted more as food for people since it seems a favorite by children and people? If ever, what food is supposed to be promoted for Pinoys to get vitamin A and also niacin, thiamine, energy?
Answeran na ata ni Josie kanina.
Opo, na-answer na po kanina. So, nabanggit nga po kanina na pwede talaga naman po i-promote yung pork liver at saka chicken liver. And aside from that po, meron po tayong mga kalabasa, malunggay na mataas din po o green leafy vegetables na mataas din po sa vitamin A. And then nabanggit nga po kanina na ni Dr. Agdepa, so pag ginisa natin yan, mas napopromote po or yung vitamin A po sa mga pagkain na yon.
Thank you, Josie. So another question, does FNRI encourage food companies to fortify their products? Any incentives for them? Also, what is the status of DOH fortification program?
Doc Ben, do you want to answer? Or anybody from the group?
So food fortification, as we know, is one of the different strategies of the government to address micronutrient deficiencies, including mga undernutrition. Right now po, di po ba, marami na tayong mga food products that are already fortified. So it's actually it's a voluntary food fortification. So ito po, nakakatulong po siya to improve the dietary adequacy of Filipinos Pero right now, in terms of the status, I don't know kung meron na pong mandatory fortification of the different food items like oil, flour, ano pa po yung different food products na pwedeng
Oil.
to be oil. Yes po. So ito po yung
Rice.
pinupush ng Department of Health na sana mas marami pa pong ma-fortify to really address the micronutrient deficiency alongside with the diet diversification. So these are alam naman mga short-term strategies, pero in the long term, in the long run, kailangan pa rin ma-promote natin yung diet diversification, highlighting the different nutritious food groups. So yun po. So 7 food groups. Specifically among young children in the complementary feeding, di po ba yung IYCF, we are promoting yung mga animal source food para more likely they will be meeting their micronutrient requirements. So yun po yung ano pa rin. So we are supporting that syempre kasi with the evidence right now, there is really a need to strengthen this strategy po.
Thank you,
That's
Doc
all.
Ben. Another question po. What will be the government's best action to address the concerns of indigenous people as they are the ones who usually fail, especially on stunting? Who's the most appropriate agency to implement related programs and assistance and how? So,
Actually,
concern po ng indigenous people.
Yeah, actually that can be best answered later on during the panel discussion with Dr. Dayang Hirang and Governor Yap. No, so I think you can stay with us until the afternoon session, and to answer just a very to answer the question, there is actually an agency catering to IPs. No, so for the different programs to address this. You have seen a while ago that there's really a need for us to do some sort of going to the basics, home gardening, no, community gardening, simple messages for them, no, so making food accessible to them. But for the concrete samples or concrete plans and programs, Dr. Dayang Hirang and Governor Yap and Department of Agriculture will soon present to you this afternoon their different programs to address this issue. Maraming salamat.
Thank you, Dr. Agdepa.
I think no more questions on the chat box. So, Mylene and Francis, over to you.
Okay, so for the questions that we were not able to answer due to limited time, we will be very much willing to answer them through email if you will just provide your email address or other contact details through the chat box. So just to recognize the invaluable efforts of our speakers in providing us with this crucial data, let us give them a big virtual applause. Congratulations, Dr. Goyena, Ma'am Beth, and Ma'am Josie for that very engaging presentations that you have provided us. So at this point, may we also request our panelists to turn on their cameras for a photo op.
Sabihin natin kay Dr. Pacifica daw paki-open yung video.
Yes po, paki-open po ng videos ng ating mga panelists.
Nawala na siya ata.
Andyan na po si Dr. June. So, okay na po tayo. So, sa atin pong IT team, ready na? Okay. 1, 2, 3. Smile. Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you to all our directors who are present here today. And thank you also to Dr. Barba. I know you are there, Dr. Aida, and Dr. Florentino has in the chat box. Maraming salamat po sa inyo, si Dr. Mario. And hello, Dr. Calibo. Parang ang layo-layo natin, ano? So, thank you, Dr. June. Thank you, Dr. June.
Thank you.
Salamat
Thank you, Doc.
po. Thank you. Thank
So
you for
stay
the
with us
time.
until the afternoon.
Yes po.
Bye-bye.
Thank you po. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so that
Thank you.
concludes our session for this morning, and we look forward to see you again in this afternoon session on the ENNS Biochemical Survey results. So please be back by 12:45 noon. Also, don't forget to answer the evaluation and post-test through your ENNS account. So have a hearty and healthy lunch, everyone. Thank you.
Ako si Marilyn Lito, 31 years old, may 7 anak, isang mangangalakal. Bali, ang pangangalakal ko, maaga pa lang, alas 4 pa lang ng madaling araw, inikot ko na halos 5 kilometro. Mula dito hanggang Pandakan, ganyan. Para pagkuwanan ko ng kalakal. Yung pang almusal namin yun, kada araw-araw yun yung mga anak.
Malaki ang gampanin ng kalusugan sa kaunlaran ng isang pamilya. Pamilyang pinakamaliit na unit ng lipunang ating ginagalawan. Sa loob ng 5 araw ay sinamahan namin ng Pamilya Lindo upang malaman kung sapat ba ang nakukuha nilang nutrisyon base sa kanilang kinakain.
Bali, ito yung 14 pesos na napagbentahan ko sa kalakal ngayong umaga. Ito yung iaalmusal namin ngayon. Bali, paghahati-hatian namin ngayon yan ng mga anak ko. O mga anak ko, kape na kayo. O. Alan o. Kape. O. Minsan yan, si Chepo, 30 pesos lang talaga pag walang kalakal.
Sa 30 pesos na yun ang binibili nyo?
Madalas sa ilang yung anak kong pinapakain ko, kape na lang, madalas tinapay. Apat na lang yun nakasama ko kasi yung 2 nasa tsuhin ko sa ating po nung iniwan ko. Tapos yung isa namatay. Isa't kalahating taon siya. Last November 28 lang.
May regular check-up ba yung bata?
Wala siyang regular check-up pero nakapagpa-check-up man kami mga 2 buwan pa lang. Kasi hindi ko na interest minsan ang yung hindi ko na mabantayan kung ano. Ang iniisip ko yung makakuha ko ng mga kalakal pangkain nila. Hindi ko na nakikita kung ano ba hinahawakan nila. Hindi ko na sila napapansin kung dapat ko ba linisin mula bago papakain. Iniisip ko pag nakakuha ko ng pangkain nila. Kain na tayo.
Sapat na yun.
Nawala na sa isip ko yung kalusugan nila. Pero siguro yun ang pasma sa pagkain dahil wala kami sa tama sa oras kung kumain. Kumbaga kung kailan lang ako makadilihensya ka ng pagkain, gano'n. Saka lang kami kakain. Minsan kakatulugan na nga nila ang pagkain.
Hindi sapat ang nutrisyon na nakukuha ng Pamilya Lindo base sa kinakain nila araw-araw. Kulang na kulang. Kapag kulang sa pagkain at kulang sa tamang nutrisyon, ano nga ba ang posibleng mangyari sa mga bata ito? Sila ay kulang sa timbang, sila ay madaling kapitan ng sakit, sila ay magiging bagsot at pagpating. Ngayon, pag sila nag-aaral na, sila ay hindi makaka-perform ng mabuti sa kanilang paaralan dahil magiging kulang ang kanilang mental development. So, napakahalaga ng tamang nutrisyon sa buong pamilya dahil hindi lamang bata ang pinag-uusapan, pati na rin po ang mga nanay at tatay. Dahil hindi sila makakapagtrabaho ng mabuti kung sila po ay kulang sa pagkain, tamang pagkain.
Minsan, galing na lang sa kalakal yung mga pagkain na kinukuha ko, napakain ko sa kanila.
Nakalulung